Welcome back to Cannabis Reconstructed. I'm joined today by Stephanie Weaver, CEO of Umamii, a New York cannabis brand. Thanks for jumping on today, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Hey, this goes back. We met NECANN 2023, the very beginning of this year, or already at the end of the year.
Yeah, went by
10,
fast.
way too fast.
Yeah, yeah.
New York was just like a little idea at the time, I think, when I met you and the team.
Yep, it was definitely an idea. As I'm sure everybody knows, New York did things a little interesting to kick off their program in an interesting way. So it was definitely an idea of ours of how we could become a part of that program when we met back in the winter, I think it was, of 2023 at NECANN. So yeah, we did a lot in a short time period.
Well, and now you're in market in New York, right?
Yes, we are. We are in market, which is awesome. We're in 4 or 5 dispensaries now, continuing to add more and more to our portfolio. We just had product available to start selling out into the market a few weeks ago. So, we've made a lot of headway in the past few weeks. It's been all hands on deck for sure.
Have you had a chance to let the fact that you're in market actually sink in?
Just now, I feel like every day is, just get the next task done, do the next thing. As I'm sure starting a business, you're in it too. So
Yeah.
it becomes it's good to sit back and like take a deep breath and actually say, wow, we're in market.
It's a big deal. I totally can relate. Not enough time to actually step back and let things sink in. And it's definitely the thick of a startup is daunting to say the
Yeah.
least.
A
So let's
never
take a
ending
step.
to-do list for sure.
Yeah. I think, that's one of the things I've been working on for this year is like, well, the big goal going into 2024 is just having a little bit more of discipline of, all right, that's it for the day, right? Because there's always things to do. So I
Yeah.
started last week, like starting to unwind a little bit earlier in the evening and hoping that last week, this week, it's about building new habits. And it's really tough, like when you're building a startup to create that space, but it's necessary. And I also think that early days of a startup, it's necessary to go all in because it needs that to start to flourish. But then it's like, okay, 6, 9, 12 months, I've been going all in. This is not sustainable.
Mhm.
We have delivered to an extent of what we're trying to do. I need to create some space for myself so I can actually show up as the best version of myself in my business.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a lot of long days. It's a lot of, never ending phone calls and emails on the weekends. But it's a passion. It's something that we've worked so hard for that to me, I can't sometimes sit back as much as I want to. I totally agree with you to bring your best self to the business every day and not have that burnout. But sometimes it's hard. And I think, for me, it's a focus of keep going, keep pushing, keep surrounding yourself with really good people. Add team members if you can, to delegate here and there. Sometimes that's not always a possibility with, funding right off the bat. So we do have a good solid team of people that really helps to push our message. Nick Wilson, who's our director of cultivation, growing really high quality product that we can then sell and push into the market in being having to be a little bit less hands-on with that piece and have Nick and stuff has been awesome. But I feel you, I just sometimes want to sit down and read a book and it doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely going through this process right now. I started last night of just annual reflection. It's like, oh, it's been a lot of great progress professionally and career and business this year, but hobbies have lacked, and I need to almost step back and decide, okay, what are some things that I'm going to pick up for next year and do to help myself balance because I love what I do, right?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
it's like a sport. It's fun. It's competition, but
for sure.
I need to kind of go in the other direction a little bit. So
Yeah.
let's take a step back. This is a new series. Obviously, we're doing customer interviews, but also Cannabis Reconstructed. The idea behind Cannabis Reconstructed is very much that we're rebuilding the cannabis industry right now. We saw this massive inflection point take place in the marketplace 2017, 2018, a lot of growth, a lot of scale. And in many cases, a lot of the investments that were deployed are insolvent at this point.
Yep.
So what we're really focused on is bringing operators like yourself in to share with us what they're doing differently and what your view is like in building in cannabis in 2023, going to 2024. Yes, New York is a new market, but at the same time, like how are we learning from prior mistakes in mature markets and setting out to do things differently? Let's
Sure.
talk a little bit about tell us about yourself, all right? Like how did you get into cannabis? How long have you been doing it? Why are you doing it? But give us a little bit of a background on your history.
Okay, so I started out working in professional services in a marketing role. And within that role, I started to see, I was in New York at the time. I started to see a lot of individuals wanting to get into the hemp space. And with that, their goal of getting into the hemp space was to get into the cannabis space in New York in the future, which ultimately worked out well for a lot of people that thought that way because New York allowed conditional licenses to go to those that grew hemp within the New York State market first. So that was a good forward thought of all those people. So kudos to you. Um, but anyway, so I saw all these people wanting to get into the hemp space to transition into cannabis, and missing they were missing one of two things. They either had the passion and no really business acumen, or they had a lot of business acumen but not a lot of passion. So I felt like I could bridge that gap and create, bring a management style and how I would run a cannabis business to market in a way that operated with passion and business acumen. So that's kind of what got me into the cannabis space. So we originally started, we've helped other brands, or myself, I've operated in management role for other brands as well. But when this opportunity came about for New York State and to be able to grow here, and just what I think that the state will ultimately have to offer, it seemed like a win-win opportunity. We also were able to put together a really good team to help us operate in New York State. Everything from our construction and contractors to, again, I've mentioned Nick, who's growing for us. We have a great sales team, great compliance and finance team. So we're able to kind of, I always look at a business of having a lot of different puzzle pieces and who's going to own those puzzle pieces. And I feel like we're almost completing our puzzle, at least at this point with the team that we have. Now we'll need to keep adding more and more down the road, but we have a really solid foundation right now in New York State. So that's originally what got me into the cannabis market. And then ultimately why I chose to be in New York is just the opportunity here. The opportunity that we had to grow within the conditional program and get started, right away. It was one that I didn't have the ability to pass up.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, I would say the same for myself and what we're doing at Vert, right? Like we haven't been in any other market as much as we have in New York this year because of the opportunity that we see, just
Yeah.
like you see. That being said, we should talk a little bit about what the opportunity is and how far out it might be because for us, we're playing a long game. I know you are playing a long game, and I think anybody in New York cannabis right now needs to be approaching it as a long game because of the complexities that are in the market today, right?
Yeah, it is a more complicated market, but I also think complicated markets bring opportunity to those that know how to navigate them and manage them, and those people who do have that long-term mentality. So a lot of what we do right now is meant for right now. We have our future plans and our goals, and how we're going to continue to kind of add on to the foundation that we've created. Right now our goal is to get a quality market into product, to start to gain some brand recognition, but we are continuing to add on to our current offerings. So we'll be adding all season greenhouses in the future, things like that to continue to bring elevated, innovative products to market. Um, but we do things you had talked about investors and losing investments in the cannabis industry when we first started this. One of the ways that we operate is we do things very slowly and methodically. So we would never go add 10 greenhouses. We would add one. And then we would figure out how is that selling? What does the market want from us? What are dispensaries asking for? Then we would add on the second one. So we do things in a very structured, methodical way, and we don't ever get too excited. we try to always keep a level head. And I think, as you talk about entering New York, I think that's one of the best ways to be in the New York market right now is slow, methodical, long-term vision.
Completely agree. Cash preservation has to be at the top of the list in a market like New York right now.
Yeah,
Look at a state like Missouri where it was a race to build automation and scale the past year.
yeah,
Um, that's not the case in a market like New York right now because of the sell through and just ultimately the volume that is going through the market. And
right.
it
I
to your
did see sorry, I did see a statistic. I can't remember. I'm gonna have this number wrong, but there was somewhere between 3,300 and 3,400 applications into the Office of Cannabis Management for retail establishments. So we'll start to see more and more of those, which I think will help the market a lot as well.
I agree. I mean, I think 2024 in New York specifically is still going to be a major building blocks year. I think
Mhm.
2025 is going to be the year that we really see the inflection point for the New York cannabis market. And that's
Sure.
just gut. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just throwing a dart at the wall, but having
Sometimes intuition is all you can go on, though.
Hey, you know what? I've watched enough markets unfold to where my gut's pretty good. But it sounds like, we're wrapping up 2023, which is the first full year of New York cannabis, and in a much better place than where we were at the beginning of this year. I'm genuinely excited for what's to come for New York. And I think I was reading that, to your point on the OCM, it sounds like they're getting ready to push through or approve close to over 1,000 licenses.
Yes, there is a big approval coming. There was a deadline for applications. That deadline has passed. I don't remember exactly when it was, but since that deadline has passed, they're now in the review process to approve more and more applications. They have opened up their regular licensing, so anybody can apply, not just the conditional program, which will also help bring more dispensaries online, bring more cultivators online. Obviously, it's economic supply and demand, so we need both.
Yeah, I love your point on with challenge comes opportunity. Fully agree with you, especially like as an ancillary, knowing how to navigate cannabis markets and how unique each one is, it creates a ton of opportunity. So I love that call out. Tell us a little bit about the story behind Umami. Like, how did the name Umami come about? What does it mean? What's the why behind Umami? Share with us, for those who have never heard of Umami before, give us the download.
Yeah, so our branding process for Umami was a roller coaster. We had had a lot of other names. We would get dead set on a name and the meaning, and then we would sit on it for 24, 48 hours. And, a member of our team would then be like, not sitting right with me. Oh, I saw this other company had this. And so it was just this ever ending, almost like this really, really high euphoric feeling to feeling disappointed over and over again. So one day we sat for a few hours and just kept talking about names and talking about what we wanted our brand to mean. And I lean into Nick a lot with this process. And he really wanted to bring a high quality, flavor forward cannabis to the New York State market. Something that actually focused on more than just THC percentage or total TAC, whatever you go by, and really bring this high quality, flavorful product to market. And that is how we ultimately ended on the name Umami, because umami is basically a word that means this, very flavorful experience that you have with spices or foods or um, different things that you may consume. So that is how we landed on the name Umami, and we just went with it. And it's the one that we never came back from. It just felt like it fit. It felt our brand and what we wanted to bring to the market. We also want a very sleek and modern look and feel, which you see with a lot of the packaging that you've helped us to create. That kind of just blacks and whites and maybe a little pop of color with the blue. So we didn't want to have a focus on green and weed and the leaf necessarily, but more on what our brand meant in that kind of sleek flavor forward concept.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's into Asian fusion, definitely got excited by the name Umami when we first engaged on the project.
Different. It's different for this industry, but it will have, it will resonate with people more and more as our brand, continues to saturate the market.
And I think different is the key, right? Like to your point on saturation, there's a lot of saturation in the market with a lot of the same. Anybody who's building a brand right now or considering entering this space needs to be really putting that time into thinking about differentiation and what are you doing to stand out on shelf in a crowded market.
Yeah,
So
it's
different's
it's
good.
one of the most difficult pieces of, I think, the cannabis industry in general, because yes, stand out on shelf and you have your in-store displays and dummy packaging and posters and signage and counter displays, or maybe an elevated floor display, things like that. But there's also a lot of complications when it comes to marketing and brand recognition with, social media and things like that. So your marketing strategy has to shift a little bit if compared to a typical CPG type product.
What totally agree, and it's heavily reliant on the bud tender. Um,
Very, very. Yeah. The bud tenders they're your gatekeeper.
Very
It's
much so.
yeah.
And we've seen it time and time again, the brands that really invest in that bud tender and have a quality product that bud tender can get behind
Mhm.
tend to do well.
Yeah. Yeah. We are very focused on that, in terms of doing pop-up events, bud tender educations, constant check-ins. We're working on more of an innovative approach to our bud tender relationships as well, in the future. Those are trade secrets for now, but
We'll keep
yeah,
them
I,
that
I
way.
totally agree with you. The bud tender relationship in this industry is so incredibly important, because like when you go into a liquor store, you have, at least in New York, and I know liquor stores are different everywhere. I can kind of browse the shelves, pick out a couple wine bottles that resonate with me or that I've seen here and there, and I leave. With a dispensary, it's just so different. You need to have that. Most dispensaries have that human interaction to even decide what you want to buy and make a purchase. So I actually like that. I think that human interaction piece of dispensaries is a pretty cool and unique thing that the cannabis market has.
How, to that point, and obviously I know Mark just really getting into market and starting to enter into the dispensary retail environment with the brand. What are like what's the current view over the dispensary retail landscape in New York? And as you think about really scaling up sales here in the short to medium term versus the long term, do you see more emphasis on just staying regional, local, in that maybe upstate New York area versus trying to compete in the city right now? What are some of the goals that you have short versus medium to long term for the brand when looking at just when I think about New York, it's such a diverse marketplace, right? There's like just the city alone, 10, 11 million people with a ton of different cultures that exist. So
Yes.
like where might Umamii play really well in the city would I guess might be a question for you, just versus how it might play well upstate. Love to hear your thoughts there.
So our sales process right now for New York State is to cover the entire state. And some of that is because we have to. There isn't, in a typical market, you might see five dispensaries within 5 minutes from each other, 10 minutes from each other. Within the New York market, you don't really see that right now. They're very spread out, in terms of who was able to get one of the conditional retail licenses. So we don't have as much control over geography right now. Long, I actually think that's okay, because now we start to get some really valuable market intel onto where our product is performing based on these kind of subset of dispensaries. And then maybe we can make some more educated business decisions for, the middle and long-term view of our business. I don't like to write dispensaries off based on where they're located necessarily. Because a lot of times, like there's been dispensaries where I've been like, oh, you're not really going to have our target market, somebody that might have a little bit more disposable income, but then they're actually getting a bunch of people coming over from the neighboring town that maybe their town isn't necessarily specific to our target market, but their neighboring town is, and there's no dispensary in that neighboring town. So it is, to me, geography matters. But not it's not the end all be all in terms of how we choose to sell right now in New York, because we're also in a state, we're in one state. So you think about like other CPG products or um, the alcohol industry, they can ship all over the United States. Right now, our geography is New York. It's not that big compared to what it could be.
For sure. Yeah, and somebody brought up an interesting point like a couple months ago. I shared some thoughts on, I think LinkedIn, and a person mentioned to me like distribution versus depth, like distribution points versus depth.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of benefit to less distribution points, less depth, but the right amount of distribution points.
Right, I agree. Yeah, to if you can find the right dispensary partners and your sell through rate is really high and it's repeat, repeat, repeat. That to me is a much more efficient um, business model. It's a better business model. Um, but there are risks with that too, in terms of you don't have the brand recognition from other people or dispensaries. And it's also to say the cannabis industry right now is state by state. Will that change down the road? And now we have brand recognition with a very small subset of the overall population. So I think they're both important.
Yeah, as with many things, it's important to strike the right balance, and ultimately, it's about finding the right balance for your business, your product, your community that you're looking to build, right? And obviously, at the very early days of building community, we talked a little bit about bud tenders. When you think about the umami community, and you fast forward maybe a year from now, what you'd like to see the umami community looking like when it comes to those loyalists and people that are constantly waiting for I haven't had this conversation with Nick, but I'm sure you guys are going to want to be going into drops where you're doing some strains that maybe are, special editions and things like that, limiteds. What does the future community for Umami look like? How do you think about building community?
I have so many ideas for building community. So I want our community to be people that appreciate the quality and the approach that we have to how we grow and how we sell cannabis. So if we're not just focused on really high THC percentages, but bringing you very high quality, flavorful cannabis and an experience that you really can't get from any other brand. And then I want to see that community come together over maybe it's cooking events where we have one of our strains that is the focus of that event and creating meals that go with that strain and, flavor concepts that can be intertwined from not only the cannabis industry but also to more mainstream industries like food and beverage, things like that. I want to see our brand be able to not just be a cannabis brand but cross over into mainstream is the best word I can come up with, but more into mainstream and bring people that may have had a different view of cannabis and just get them to say, that's really interesting, that cooking experience that Umamii just brought to our community. Or is there ways that we could give back to communities through flavor, things like that? So that's how I envision building our community, for years to come, really.
Yeah, I think like in addition to mainstream lifestyle, right? And I think New York's the right place to be tackling that type of approach to brand and community building. Going back again to just the amount of diversity that exists in a market like that.
Yeah.
And,
Lifestyle is a really like the perfect word and something that we have really thought about as we were developing our brand is lifestyle and being able to be more than just cannabis, being a true experience for our users and our customer base. So yeah, lifestyle was right the perfect word.
right on. What are some of the challenges right now you're facing as a cannabis brand in New York, and what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
Challenges. So right now, being a startup, I think that's a little bit easier for me to talk to than just New York, but I do have a couple New York points. Being a startup is resources. We are starting to have cash flow, but not enough for all the resources that we really need. So it's doing a lot with a little. Every startup faces that, and every startup has that kind of growing pain, um, pivotal point in their business. I think we're kind of in that stage right now. So that's difficult at times. We talked about that in the beginning in terms of a lot of work hours and doing a lot with as little as we can to preserve cash flow, preserve the investment that we have. That's a challenge. In New York in general, one of the challenges is, again, what we just talked about, geography. So where all the dispensaries are very spread out. There isn't a ton of distribution online yet either. So a lot of these deliveries we are doing ourselves. So that takes somebody away from the site to go deliver, or it means that I have a salesperson who lives in Albany that has to drive to Buffalo, that then has to drive it back because you can't store your cannabis anywhere else without a separate license. So some of those, eventually we'll get there with having more distribution companies come online. But that just creates for like logistical and process challenges for us right now. And then, in New York, making sure that people understand the Umamii brand and what we have now, but also our plans for what we're going to bring to market in the future. So it's not only educating on current Umamii and our current product offerings, but we are going to have these all season greenhouses in the next one will be online in the next couple of months, bringing brand new products to market. So those are some of the challenges right now.
Speaking about, as it relates to those challenges, that I don't think they're necessarily unique, which is a good thing, which means the competition is probably facing those same challenges too. And then that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is if this isn't your first rodeo and you have the right talent, between not just yourself, but really speaking from my seat as an operator too, it's like leaning into where my strengths are, but surrounding myself with people that are way better than me at what they do, and leaning on their strengths. And if you're assembling that team, which I know you are, it creates a competitive advantage, which is an exciting thing too.
Yeah, it does. Having the right team is critical. Morgan, who's she runs she's our chief compliance officer. She's very, very solid. Make sure that we don't miss the beat. Nick is, obviously, I've talked about him quite a bit, director of cultivation. He's a genius in terms of how he grows and his thought process and his artistic and creative approach to how he grows. And he's just, he's been doing it for a long time, and he brings knowledge that I'll never have, and I don't need to have because I have him. So, he's pretty great. We have a good sales and marketing team. So yeah, we're starting to get all the puzzle pieces in place, but it's a challenge, growing pains, and just keep on keeping on.
It's the name of the game. It's
Yep,
survival of the fittest, and just
for sure.
being able to push through. You're never going to get away from those challenging days. They're always there. It's that ability to say, all right, tomorrow's a new one.
Yep, yep.
Hopefully, I don't carry the same problems in from yesterday into today, but sometimes there are those things that linger on too. And that's when having the right team is all about lifting one another up when one's down.
Yeah, that is that's a good point. It's it helps to have people around you that can be there for the good and the bad.
Yeah, yeah, and communication, is
Yep.
a huge one, especially when the bad's around.
Yeah.
Uh, so exciting upcoming projects. We talked a little bit about Greenhouse One is coming online, probably end of Q1, it sounds like, which means increased output, more product going into the market.
Yeah.
How about potentially some new products? Right now, Eighth Flower is in the market. What can you share about what's in the queue as it relates to just maybe some upcoming development?
So one of the products that we're most excited about is our live resin carts that we have coming online. Those are going to be, incredibly flavorful, just a really, really high quality experience. There's been no remediation, no color remediation, just a very, very pure, high quality product. That's the one that I'm most excited about, and I know Nick is really excited about that as well. We also have infused pre-rolls that will be coming online in the next couple of weeks. Those should be available. Same with carts; those should be available in the next couple of weeks. We're also going to have a 5-pack, a 4 or 5-pack of pre-rolls, as well as the single 1-gram infused pre-rolls. Those will be coming to market. That's probably more like a 30-45 day time frame for us. So we have kind of chunks of different product offerings coming to market here, and that's really short term what we have coming to market, and then long term that will be that will be ever changing as our all season greenhouse comes online and we continue to use our hoop houses for product innovation and see what else we can bring to market and where we can be innovative. We also really want to lean into our dispensary partners and ask them questions and what is selling, what types of products do you need, how can we be helpful, so that will also help guide some of our product offerings as well.
It sounds like 2024 is gonna be an exciting year for the Umami team, to say the least.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you because obviously we've spent a fair amount of time on the packaging side of packaging up Umami. What type of, with the innovation queue that you have, the product rollout queue that you've got for the brand and the growth that's planned for next year, how does a domestic supply chain really pair well with what you're doing in comparison to an overseas supply chain? A lot of this industry is still very much up, and I can speak for New York. A lot of New York is still buying, or not still, but a lot of New York has started with buying packaging from overseas. You made the choice to go domestic. With that might come a little bit of a premium in cost at times, not always, but at times. But there's also benefit, I assume. You've been around, like help us understand just your thought process around domestic versus import supply chain.
For me, it's all about really high quality customer service and getting what I need when I need it. And that sounds simple, but to me, those are very, very important details of our business. We could have a change right now as I'm talking to you on this call that I need something for by Monday morning. And I need somebody that can have quick turnaround times. I need a point of contact to talk to, um, really at all hours of the day if I need something. So those are my two biggest reasons for going domestic rather than overseas. And I think quality. We have. I think our packaging is really high quality. I think that what we're trying to bring to market is more of that elevated feel, and I think our packaging does that. So quality, customer service, time frame of me getting what I need.
Yeah, I think, in a market like New York, speed to shelf, concept to shelf and how fast you can take that and go from idea to product package is a game changer. Uh,
Right. And things are changing so much in New York. So there's also an element of I don't want to have to buy 50,000 of something when New York could change one little detail and now I have 50,000 pieces of packaging that I can't use. So we order, as you know, we order in smaller amounts, and I'd rather order more frequently knowing that I can get it when I need it than having all of this waste because of one change in regulation.
Totally get that. And I think like what we're going to see too in this market, specifically in New York, is top selling products. We're going to see that kind of it might shift a little bit over time. Who knows? But it sounds like right now, like to your point on multi-packs, I've been hearing recently, and this isn't unique to New York, but I think across markets, we're seeing the single pre-roll and package really kind of lose its position here in comparison to what it was for like the last 8 to 10 years, right? And that's
Yeah.
because packaging costs when you go to a multi-pack is going to be less on a per joint basis. The consumer ultimately today is looking for a high quality product at a competitive price. But I'm hearing that multi-packs are actually in pretty high demand right now in New York, as well as
Yeah.
markets we're doing business with.
I also think New York has a unique law around smoking cannabis compared to other states, which allow for the multi-pack to be more of an interesting product for the consumer to buy. So in New York, you could walk down the street and smoke if you want to. You can smoke cannabis anywhere that you can smoke a cigarette. A lot of other states don't necessarily allow that. So now you have a multi-pack and how easy it is for you to just grab it out of your purse or your pocket and smoke it, where you don't have as many people like that might, I don't know, pack a bowl to go walk down the street. So it's just a different, I think it's a different consumer because the state also allows for the consumption of cannabis to be done a little bit easier, honestly, than some of the other states, which is weird to say for New York, but it's the truth.
It's an interesting point. And, convenience is obviously, key, right?
Yeah, convenience
Uh,
is 100% key, and you're walking down the busiest streets in the city, and also people who live in the city, it could be harder to get to a dispensary right now, so they want to buy more at once. Even though we're starting to see more and more dispensaries. When I was in the city, the closest dispensary was still miles from me, from where I was staying. So, not everybody has a car, and then it's public transportation or walking. So I could see, I do understand why that multi-pack might be performing better.
how do you see really the future of cannabis and the industry, evolving and playing out in the state of New York? You think about 3, 4, 5 years out, what does this market look like?
In the state of New York solely.
State of New York solely.
Um, I think I think New York will be one of the biggest markets that cannabis has ever seen. I truly believe that. I think that we'll start to see it become more mainstream with things like consumption lounges. There was something in the regs, and forgive me, but I cannot remember if this has been passed or not, where they were actually going to allow consumption within dispensaries. There had to be like a glass partition or something, but right within the dispensary itself, people could go sit outside or sit within a smoking area and consume. So I think thoughts like that will allow for this market to be very innovative, and it's not going to be exact, but replicate more of that experience of going to a bar, going out with your friends, more of a mainstream consumption approach.
I don't, how do I think about this? Markets have struggled to successfully do what you've described. And I think part of that is very much regulation. We see here in Colorado right now, there's a big push for the consumption lounges. And there's a group that's getting ready to, they finished their raises. They're, fully funded to my understanding. They're pretty far along with the build out. I think they'll be live next year. I think there's definitely a place for that consumption lounge, and I don't know that anybody's really figured it out yet. Because if they did, we'd see a lot of traffic and a lot of people hanging out at it, I would say. I think there's gonna be a lot of different types of consumption lounges. It's community too, right? Like, where do you want to go out, hang out with your friends on a Friday night, potentially, or there's a lot of different applications, I would say, for the lounge. But I
I
agree with
agree.
you.
And I think the one thing that New York has that other places don't is the city. The city brings a whole different dynamic to that whole conversation, in my opinion. Um, I think if New York does pass the regulation where they allow consumption within a dispensary, I think that could be a game changer in terms of, the drip of seeing more consumption outside of homes. I mean, if you think about how people consume cannabis right now, it's mostly in their home or in a friend's home. Like,
Yeah.
that's very weird compared to other, like, again, I'll go back to the alcohol industry. It's so normal to go out to the bar and grab a glass of wine with your friends. I don't understand why cannabis can't be the same. And I hope that as more and more states come online and cannabis has continues to be around, and like the historical perspective that people may have, there's more data to back up decision making, that we will loosen the regulations around things like consumption lounges. And because to me, that is one of the key ways that cannabis truly becomes mainstream. You have to allow people to do it outside of their home in a way that they are used to, like going to a bar, things like that.
Totally. And I agree with you in regards to that being a market where we actually create adoption, New York being a market where we create adoption for this, right? The cigar bar. I was sitting at a cigar bar in New York, not even a cigar bar, it was a cigar lounge. It was a cigar shop that had a lounge connected to it. No difference than a dispensary with a lounge
Same
connected.
concept.
Right. And like, even just as we're sitting here talking, the idea of, cannabis paired with, maybe it is, a cooking food experience, not just in your food, but like crafting it,
Yeah.
um, to art, right? Like, there's such a wide use of the product and plant, but to your point, the fact that most people are still holed up in their houses consuming it hasn't really allowed it to even start to flourish, which is an
No.
exciting thing for the future.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. Again, I think that's one of the key ways that there's mass adoption. You have to allow it to intersect people's lives in a way that doesn't make them go completely out of their way, out of what they're typically going to do. People go out to dinner, people go out to the bar. People can't go out and go to a cannabis lounge with their friends. I just find it to be interesting. I know cannabis is still new, so I understand, but I hope that we can have greater adoption to pushing cannabis into the mainstream and into people's everyday lives.
Fully stand behind that statement and with you. Locked in arms on the mission for sure. Really appreciate you jumping on with us today. This has been fun to just hear a little bit more of your view on the market, what you guys are doing, and really ultimately your view of Umamii here going into 2024, 2025. Where can people find Umamii? Where can they find you out online? Where can they find you out on shelf?
So we are in 4 different dispensaries right now, and I can tell you exactly what those dispensaries are with my handy dandy tool that I have over here. 1 second. Maybe I can. Here we go. So we are in TJ's Cannabis Company. We are in Finger Lakes Cannabis Company. We are in the Greenery Spot, and we are in Upstate Cannabis Company right now. We are in the process of adding that to our website. So it's enjoyumamii.com. And as we continue to add more and more dispensaries into our portfolio, that will be updated real time on our website as well.
And how about on Instagram?
Enjoy Umamii.
All right.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thanks for jumping on with us today. This was fun, and I'm looking forward to being a big part of the team at Umamii in 2024 and helping
We
feed the
appreciate you.
growth.